Welcome to this episode of the ASQ podcast, where we focus on life, leadership, and culture. In today's episode, we're discussing the silent epidemic of self-doubt, the imposter syndrome. Stay tuned. Hey there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Good? Yeah. So
good.
looking forward to this episode, right? Yeah.
I am,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. I like the intro. You know, you said quite a few good things in the intro. So I want to hear more about what is it that you would like to accomplish? What message is the message that we collectively would like to convey based on this episode?
That's a good question. So I think that for me, you know, we said it in the introduction, right? It's the silent epidemic.
Yeah. Why do you think it's a silent epidemic?
I don't think that people acknowledge their feelings of inadequacies.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had a couple of meetings where I was doing, because I'm doing this project management. I'm currently involved in it. And I don't go into these meetings and go, gosh, I'm filled with so much self-doubt. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to carry through this meeting and be effective. And are people going to... I don't do that. So it's silent in terms of it's something that I feel in the moment. And it's those feelings of self-doubt and those feelings of like not feeling adequate and not feeling like I'm going to be able to get away from this, in this case, meeting with good information, and people are going to feel like, wow, that wasn't a waste of time. You know how people can feel like a meeting is a waste of time, right? So I think it's silent in that way. I think a lot of people don't say, or acknowledge it openly, you know, and so that is the silent epidemic.
Yeah. One of the things that I, personally speaking, right, one of the things that I always talk to people about is when I do trainings and talk to people, it's about using I statements, right? Because I statements are key for us to be able to understand what we're saying, who we're saying it to, and to understand context, right?
Right. And
personally speaking, there's a lot of terms thrown out there and they become very trendy, right? Toxic, trauma. And I believe that this is one as well that kind of like fits under that category, right? And we say these things and we recognize these things without truly understanding the context of it, and then the broadness of what defines it and what it is, right? So I think that I like this episode and the way that you scripted it, because it kind of like gives people true definition of what it is, right? And the objective is to be able to realize really, what does it mean? How do I overcome it, right? And what are the sources of it so that I could actually move forward in my life, right? So,
and that's exactly what the objective is with this whole episode.
No, awesome.
So let me start with a quote, because I thought this was really good. I don't know who wrote this quote, but it says, imposter syndrome can silently undermine our achievements and potential. By confronting and overcoming these self-limiting beliefs, we can unlock our true capabilities and foster a more confident and resilient self. Just summarizes what you just said, right?
Yeah.
That we have, it does minimize our ability to function at our highest potential. And I think that we don't acknowledge that these things exist, which is why I was, again, saying it's a silent epidemic, right?
Yeah.
But imagine being able to confront these things, acknowledge that they're there and that they exist, not feel ashamed to talk about it, be able to be vulnerable about it and be open, and then live to our our fullest potential.
I think one of those definitions that I've seen that it's really kind of like points at it, right, is our innate ability or inability to see ourselves as what we're capable of being, right? So one of the definitions that I read about imposter syndrome is this internalized fear of being a fraud.
Correct.
Right? Of being pretending to be something that you're not, and then being able to be found out about it, right?
Right.
And that's a very...
Being exposed,
exactly. That's a very dense... what do you call it? It's a very dense phenomena, right? That you feel like a fraud. even though you have the qualification, so you have, and we're going to talk about it more because I have a perspective on it that encompasses what we do at a Source Quest. But I want to get more into your definitions, your things, and the things that you really want to share. But it's just that idea of being exposed as a fraud, right? Yep. That makes this topic so interesting and intense. Yeah, so
it is. Well, actually, that's part of the definition of imposter syndrome.
Okay,
that's okay. It's basically what it is it's a psychological pattern.
Okay.
Marked by chronic self-doubt and the fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of competence and success. So I thought that was really, it's a good definition because that just lays it out. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
We've have a proven track record. We've accomplished things. We've been successful, but yet we still have self-doubt.
So then that begs the question, right? If we have the track record, right? So then why are we feeling that?
I think that a lot of it, when I think about it without really putting a lot of effort, I think a lot of it has to do with societal expectations.
That's true. That's true.
Also, we've talked about this in past episodes, the comparison, that whole thing, right? Like if I go into a classroom with somebody that has been teaching for 10 years and I just started, there it is. There is a comparison. Like, oh, this person knows way more about this than I do, even though I've got a degree in this or that, or I've done, I've talked about this before and I know what I'm talking about. I think what happens is that comparison really gets in it just comes into play big time.
Agreed, yeah.
And so I think society and also the comparison issues that we do. And I think we're all guilty of it. We all compare ourselves to other people. I do it all the time. And I'm not abnormal. And
that's the thing, right? It's like, and that's why it's important to understand the reasons why this happens to us, right? So society, we don't grow up, or we don't grow up in vacuums and in individuals, right? We grow up in the context of a group, of a culture, right? And so whenever we are within that framework, right, there's always this idea of perfection. Number one, and the kids with the highest grades gets the most accolades, right? We glamorize successful people and the people in the top 10% of stuff, So every time we go into a situation, number one, from the society standpoint, right, we feel that need to be perfect, right? In whatever area it is. Because of the way that our society works and what it recognizes as a success or as a failure.
Correct.
Right? We personally speaking, this is one of the things that I always find interesting, right? Public speakers, right? I'm very finicky and picky about the people that I'm attracted to when it comes to speaking, right? And I feel that there need to be some natural flow, that needs to happen. I don't like the very well rehearsed and like it just doesn't feel normal to me.
It's not authentic.
It's not genuine. Authentic, right? But there's a need to fit a certain type of mode when it comes to speaking, when it comes to training, when it comes to work, right? That we as a society have kind of, as much as we talk about individualism, right? Because we look at a certain collective and define who's good and who's bad, right? Kind of like contribute to that. So that's one source of this big issue, and you brought it up, right? Societal expectations, our social upbringing, our social structures, and how they define success and failure.
Yeah, agreed. So, one of the things that I found interesting is that what you just said is that you look to these speakers and whatnot, and I just said that a lot of people feel like the comparison and whatever. What's interesting is that those individuals that we're comparing ourselves to are the ones that are experiencing a lot of the imposter syndrome. In other words, it's very prevalent in highly successful individuals, which is interesting. I thought that was because it's like
that's a very good point, right?
Yeah, right. It is because I have a couple of statistics that I wanted to share. Sure, actually. It says that there's a lot of data out there, like I said, that shows that there's a significant amount of people who experience a percentage, right, of people who, it's mostly like a lot of women in leadership roles.
That's understandable.
And C-suite executives, like those high administrators, right? So let me just read a couple of the statistics because I thought this was interesting. So 62% of workers worldwide, that's 62% all over the world, right? Experience imposter syndrome. High achievers are more likely to experience imposter syndromes than opposed to people who are just,
quote
blue
unquote,
collar.
quote unquote. Yeah.
Quote unquote.
Again, there goes the comparison and the separation.
Yeah.
Right?
And I get what you're saying, but this is just so a Harvard Business Review article highlights that 58% of tech leaders have experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their lives.
Okay.
70% of C-suite executives acknowledge struggling with imposter syndrome, despite the fact that they're at the pinnacle of their career. Like they're achieving, they're making money, they're looked to, they're adored, they're seeked out, right?
Yep.
But they experience a lot of anxiety surrounding that. 75% of women in leadership roles experience imposter syndrome, which again, that's understandable because women. Well, I'm curious to hear why you thought that.
I wanted to hear every single one of your things first, and then I wanted to go to back one by one.
Okay.
And I want to start with the women one too.
Okay, let's start with that one.
So finish reading it. Yeah.
And this isn't what I made up. I got this from a study. It says this higher prevalence among women can be attributed to various factors, including societal expectations, which I just mentioned, gender biases,
of course,
and the pressure to prove themselves in a predominantly male-dominated industries. That sounded weird. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting because I think that's the case. I mean, I've been experiencing a little bit of that lately, to be honest.
Yeah. So here's my take on it all, right? So I'm a ambiguous Hispanic male, right?
Okay.
And again, it's like, we categorize people based on what we think they are, right? Okay. And traditionally in the United States, and minorities and women have always had this issue, right? Because wait a minute, am I here because I'm really capable, or am I here as the token? Now, in women in particular, is so again, we could go into the ethnicity, the race, the gender aspect of this problem, right?
Yeah.
But the reality of it, it's not the individual here, from my point of view, that's really at fault, right? It's the societal structures, right, and the expectations of millennia of social conditioning, in which forces a person to question whether or not they're capable, right? Agreed. Are women capable? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Are minorities capable? Absolutely. But we have set a standard, right, that has been beginning to be broken. And then what happens is, in a setting like that, let's say in a professional setting, right, there's this idea of projection, right? And when other people project on us, right, then we think that it's because of us. It's their insecurities, but we don't see it like that. We internalize it as, I have to work harder, I have to prove myself, even though in the back of our heads we know what we're doing, right? It's like, I still have to prove myself, right? Because the history that came along with that, the history of why I'm here, right? The questioning. I just heard this other day, right? I was talking to someone, and he mentioned to the fact that it's like, well, I have a guy that a police officer, and he felt very uncomfortable when a female cop went to back him up.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And again, it's that I'm not shocked by it at all. There's this idea, right? And it's been a prevailing idea that somebody is better than or less than, in particular, than the standard that has been set. Right. Let's not bullshit about that. There are people who have always thought lesser than others. Of course. And when those people begin to come up, right, the women, the minorities kind of like begin to strive, it's like, you really don't know what, you probably don't. And that's happened to me a lot of the times. Oh, you don't understand. You probably, you're a middle management. You don't really get it. It's like, so there's a diminishment that happens, which is a projection, right? Then a lot of people, women, minorities, feel, not because they're not, so that makes them question. So when we start thinking, am I an imposter as a woman? It's like, no. You have to realize that what you're seeing and feeling is projections from somebody else's insecurities, particularly people that have been in power. You know, in women, have for the longest period of time have had to carry the brunt of this. And now that they're stepping up, and now that they're taking leadership roles, and now that, you know, in a lot of corporations, the glass ceiling is being broken, you know, they still kind of like carry that residue of all this time, right? Yeah. You know, and we could go back and forth, start, oh, this and that and the other, whatever, equality and all that stuff, but that you can't deny the fact that a lot of what people feel this is a something that they take core, feeling an imposter as a fraud. A lot of also of it has to do with projection. Yeah. Personally speaking, I have experienced that, right? I speak funny, I'm assertive, I'm passionate, right? So you should be in your corner, stay in your lane. I've experienced that. Yeah. So I know, but you know, and you begin to question whether or not it's you. Yeah.
I mean, I went through that with you, and there was a lot of questioning. You know, you would ask me a lot, is it me or what? You know, and I was just like, I don't see that. You know, again, I'm biased because I'm your wife, but yeah, no, I get that. I get that from other people too. I think it's a real serious situation that people go through, specifically minorities and maybe women.
Not maybe women, women do.
And women. I mean, I do. I do feel that because I am a minority and I am a female. Yeah. And so I, as of late, have been experiencing that. You know, I've been, I'm managed. I've been managed by men primarily. I think I've had one or two female women that were my bosses, and under them, I felt relaxed and, you know, open, I guess, and able to be more authentic or genuine, right? But under this male leadership, there's been this expectation, and I see how I'm treated a little differently. Even though they know that I'm capable, there's still that stay in your lane, stay down, stand down. You know what I mean? Because I'm also a very assertive individual, and I do speak my mind, and I do say what I think and feel, and I don't have poker face, quite frankly. And oftentimes I question, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? What am I not doing in order to be recognized or to be, to be recognized?
And that's what it is. It's like we can't deny the fact that it's of the projection, right? Of the projection that status quo has put on different people, you know, the token, all these things, right? Which makes people question whether really I'm capable of that. And sometimes you have to see past that, right? So that's one thing that I wanted to see, to kind of like let people know. Look at who's saying it and why they are saying it. Yeah. Right. And look at your audience and why you do that. Right now, on that aspect, that's kind of like the social changes that we've going through that makes us question whether or not, you know, you could talk about things like affirmative action and questioning, oh, well, and you see it, it's like, well, you know, you're probably here because of affirmative action or the things like, so there's always going to be that projection coming in. The second part though, that is, you know, a Harvard Business Review article highlights 58% of tech leaders have experienced imposter syndrome. And then the research indicates that 70% of C-suite executives acknowledge struggling with imposter syndrome, right? So what you're looking at here is this idea of perfectionism, right? When you get to that status, right, it is so challenging, right? And so think about the fact that as humans, right, we grow and we learn by making mistakes. When you're in that status that is so high up, a mistake, just one mistake as a human being could make or break your career.
It's a highlight. It's a highlight on that mistake.
Precisely, right? So you could do all these great things, but the moment that you fail, let's say 2 quarters in a row to make your targets and all that stuff, then what do you think that makes of you? It makes you an imposter, it makes you a fraud. So you're looking at all this stuff because you have in the context of this perfectionism, this idea that everything you do has been perfect. Now you're looking at highly successful people, right? That all their lives have been told, you're so great, you're so great, you're so great, right? You're so amazing. Oh my God, you're unbelievable. Oh my God, yes, this is crazy, you know. And then a mistake happens. Like I feel more sorry for those people, right? Because their lives are in this wheel of maintaining this idea of professionalism and perfectionism that is completely unrealistic.
That's why it's important in organizations to create a culture that that promotes psychological safety, that promotes the idea of humanity, that we're human, we make mistakes. And I find that in my leadership that I do that frequently. I first of all, if I make a mistake, I say that was on me, my bad. You know what I mean? And I sometimes I feel bad and I I feel like a fraud because I'm like, I'm not supposed to make mistakes, but I'm also very, I'm not private about it. I say, I feel bad, guys. I'm sorry. That was my bad. I should have sent that out, or, I acknowledge my mistakes. I acknowledge when I do something wrong.
Yeah. So again, I'm glad that you're using I statements, right? Because I statements are important. Now you will do that. But have you ever looked at the news, right? And something wrong goes on in any, let's say, a police department or a politician, something they making mistakes, right? Do you ever hear them saying, I apologize?
No.
No. What do? They go into spin, right? Now think about the culture that you're creating, right? You're creating a culture of distrust because, like, you are seeing this. This is what's happening, but no, that's not what happened, right? So you're seeing the reality and the reality, but then they're beginning to spin the situation. Now think about what that does to a society in terms of the need and the feeling of having to do what everybody else is doing, particularly the leaders, right? To lie. But deep down inside, this is wrong, but I have to say it. I have to say this because if not, I'm going to look bad. Or my organization is going to look bad. Right? This is one of those things that are beginning to take away what we are as humans. A species that by nature explores, learns from their mistakes, right? Recognizes different ways of doing things, right? And this is why it's not a good idea. It's say in terms like toxicity and imposter syndrome. We really have to understand the context that it does for us as individuals and the people around us.
What do you mean, like using those words? People they don't want to confront it?
No, that they have to realize that there's so much more to it than just that.
Oh yeah.
There's projections from other people. There's that idea that you see constantly prevailing in our society of no one taking responsibility. No one saying, this is wrong. I was wrong for it, right? Because, again, careers are made or break, right, on mistakes. Right? They do. I made a mistake at work. Actually, I didn't. Somebody blamed me for making a mistake that we collectively made. I took the brunt of it, right? But from that moment on, I was ostracized. Right? Ostracized. Personally, right? Now, I've learned that because I've seen the mistakes and I saw the spin. Again, all these little things we have to acknowledge when we feel that imposter syndrome. We have to recognize, to step back and look at everything. Who are these persons? What are their intentions? What am in this organization? What is the organization's intention? Because there is no organization, and I'm sorry to say that, because they need to survive, they will sacrifice and scapegoat people.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
So all these pressures go into that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's it's very much I started the whole episode with, it's a societal thing. Like that's just what we are, this is how I look at, sometimes I see parents, and when I see parents with their children and they say things to their kids, like, you can be anything you want to be. You're so amazing. You're gorgeous. You're this, you're that. I think that while that's well intended, and the intention behind it is because you want to build up their ego and you want to build up their confidence and whatnot, that you also have to make your children aware that mistakes are okay.
Correct.
And it's okay to make a mistake, and it's okay not to be the highest graded person in your class. And it's, you know what I mean? I mean, I had that happen to me when I was a young, elementary school. I would bring home, I struggled with my academics, believe it or not, because I was like a C average student. And at one point I was less than a C average. And I remember I worked really, really hard, and I brought home not an A, but I brought home, I think I brought home a C. It wasn't even a B. I brought home a C on this test, and I had studied for it, and it was math, and it was just, I was terrible at it. And I remember my dad saying, not good job, high five, good, congratulations.
Improvement.
Yeah. I'm so glad that see what studying did for you. You did it, it was next time bring home an A, or next time bring home a B. And it was just like, I was never enough.
Correct.
And that was the seed for me.
Yeah.
And it's been the seed that has grown in my life. And I've done everything that I have been able to do. I've done a lot of things with my life. I successfully raised 3 kids. And I'm speaking just for myself. I did everything that I could to be a good mom, listen, encourage. I've given, I've gone above and beyond in terms of giving in some cases. And I went to school, like I did pretty good. I mean, as an adult going to school, I did much better than I did when I was a child, right? Yeah. Because I held high expectations for myself. But even then, there were times when I remember when I was working on my bachelor's degree, and at like 11 o'clock at night, you'd come over and be like, when are you going to bed? Like, what's going on here? Which is weird because I go to bed before you do, period. And I was just like, I'm just working on this. I'll be there in a little bit. And you'd be asleep when I came to bed. And it was this high need to be the best and have a 4.0. And for what?
But listen.
And I remember one of my bosses at the time, Frank Harbor, he said, Jesse, because he would see me and I was always stressing about it. It was anxiety filled with my bachelor's degree and my associate's degree. And I remember him saying C equals degree.
Yep.
And I was just like, but it's not enough.
Yeah. But you see the root of it, right?
Yeah, I see.
You see the root of it.
Yeah.
It's a traumatic event that happened to you a long time ago. And this happens to a lot of people that have experienced trauma, or a lot of people that have experienced a lot early success and really, really amazing success.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like that as well.
So you have those two extremes. And again, this is why I always tell people, like, you have to look past what you see in an individual, past their appearances, past their illusions of monetary success and materialistic success and what have you, because the reality is, like, deep down inside, there's something that drives us. A lot of the times what drives us, it's not really of our own making. This is the interesting part, right? In that, what drove you wasn't really you. It's important to understand that, right? Because, and I'm hopefully I'm making myself clear, right? Because again, I understand it from myself. What drove me from a lot of the things that I do was this idea of belonging, right? Because I always had a difficult time with that. Where do I belong? Do I belong? I'm singing DMX. Do I belong? Do I fit in? Things on my mind. Where do I begin? Right? So, I don't know. I love DMX. Right? So when you're looking at that sense of belonging, right? The sense of being accepted, right, for who we are, we'll do anything for that. We'll do anything to not be criticized or being taken away from the group, right? And more importantly than that, we do whatever it takes to please those people around us, like our parents, in primarily,
belonging.
Right? The school teachers,
accepted.
The school teachers, right? That tell us that you see the awards out there and it's only the A's and B's, right? So you start looking at all these things, and then you start looking for that identity of self, that self-identity, as the only way that I think that yourself as you are is valid, is by showing those people that you are good enough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It is tough. That's why I like reading Brene Brown. Like I think it's in Braving the Wilderness. She talks about the idea of belonging.
Yes.
You know, and she refers to a quote by Maya Angelou about I want to belong
everywhere,
but I want to belong everywhere,
yes,
but nowhere at the same time, or something like that.
Yep.
And
Love
it's a beautiful quote because our need to belong to something sometimes is to our detriment.
It is.
And that is when that whole, it's like feeding the fire of the things that make up imposter syndrome, the doubt, the confidence, the esteem, all these things it's like this layers of stuff. And then to break that mold is so difficult. And so how do we change that? A cycle of thinking when society is so, I mean, it's just, even in relationships with, with your kids, it's something simple. Like, I want to be the best mom I can possibly be. But the one thing that has worked the best for me, especially with my relationship, like for example, with Jake, has been so amazing, is being honest.
Just being honest.
Being honest with him about I'm not perfect. I mess up. I make mistakes, and the beautiful thing about that is that he accepts that. And I think he appreciates that. You know what I mean?
And it's interesting though, right? Because again, you have to go down to the layers, because someone, and I know, I try to look at the polarity of things, right? Because yes, it's important to see and understand the reasons why you do what you do, primarily because you want to belong to something, right? And you have to see that. On the opposite spectrum of that is that, and you could become very angry and frustrated when it comes to that. But I know in frame of thoughts and looking at people, right, and listening to how people react and see things, this is the reason, this is a drive to achievement, right? It is a drive to achievement, right? Having that idea of proving that I'm not a fraud, proving that I'm capable, proving that I'm good enough, that's also a valid point. It's also a valid point to take all this stuff, because again, if you didn't really have that drive, right, to prove your dad wrong, right, that you are capable, then you probably wouldn't have made it that far.
That's true.
The question is, right, how do you bring these two opposites to the middle to use it as a way to propel you forward without the doubts, without the fear, without the anxiety of, oh shit, if I make a mistake, this is going to be the end of me.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God, if I don't get to what this person is doing, am I not going to be good enough? It's important to understand the drive, right? And use the drive, but you have to use it in a way in which doesn't sway you in either direction. Because everything's polar, right? They're both sides of the same coin. The anxiety of the fraud, being a fraud, but the need and the impulse to actually show and push yourself to discover other aspects of yourself. You need them both.
Yeah.
But you experience both, right? The idea is like, how do you come to the middle?
So you're asking that question. I know that for time's sake that we have to start narrowing this down, but and coming to a close. But one of the things that I've been experiencing a lot lately is a lot of self-doubt, a lot of lack of confidence in my abilities to do things because I'm not getting the recognition that I feel like I deserve.
Exactly.
Right. So I was thinking about this yesterday, thinking about recording this episode, and I thought, what do I want people to walk away with that is a very human thought, that I have about this whole thing. And for me personally, and this isn't any of the strategies, so to speak, that I have in here. Well, I do. It's a part of them, is really just acknowledging that I am a human being and that I just want to live, for me, I want to live a peaceful life where I feel that I can contribute in a meaningful way. And what does that look like for me? So in whatever way that is, and when I thought about it, one of the ways that I contribute that makes me feel good, that makes me feel whole, that makes me feel like I'm doing something for the greater good, if you will, is I like to do things for people. I like people to be comfortable. I like to find that space for people where they feel comfortable, where they feel safe, where they feel, like special or whatever you want to call it, that their feel good space. I like to nurture that feel good space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it thus then fulfills me as a person. And sometimes that doesn't feel like a lot because I'm not contributing in this like amazing, like mind-blowing way.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm tapping into that that space for people that allows them to be who they really are. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense
because that's how I am in trainings and at work. I try to let people know I'm human just like you. I'm no better than you are. Just because I have a doctorate, I'm not better than you that doesn't have a degree at all, for example.
Do you feel, I'm sorry to interrupt, but here's the thing, right? And then this is a very interesting thing, right? Because how can I say it in a way that it makes sense to people? We live in interesting times, right? And again, when you look at life for what it is, right? There's a lot of polarities, right? Do you feel that there is no coincidence as to why our world has become more aware, all right, of mental health, there's no, this is not, to me, from the way that I see it personally, there's no coincidence why there's so much talk on those things. What does mental health look like? What does living a fulfilling life look like, right? We have been very one-sided, in the way that we live our lives, very materialistic driven. The need to achieve, the need to, gain stuff. But what you're mentioning right now, right? If I'm looking at, again, this is the way my mind works, I'm looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So you're looking at what you're defining and what you're expressing is the psychological well-being, right? Not the physiological, but the psychological well-being aspect of creating environments in which people are allowed to explore and be who they are. Correct. And consequently, right, contribute to whatever cause of idea, collectively you're working towards, like in a business, right? So when you look at what you're saying, it's an evolution of realizing, oh my God, for the last whatever many years, we have seen things in a certain way, but now we are shifting. And this is what you see a lot of the conflict, right? You see the conflict in businesses as to, I pay you, you got to do, you got to do what I tell you to do because I'm paying you for input and output, right? Yeah. But then now you hear the mood about the movement about, okay, wait a minute, there's more to life than this,
right?
There's no coincidence. There's no coincidence that it's being driven a lot by women. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not afraid to deny that. And there's no coincidence, right? Because again, we as individuals have both polarities, male, female, right? And again, this just goes a little bit different, anima, animus, right? There's a shift, a balance that's beginning to be stricken between achievement and physical achievement and emotional and psychological well-being. That's what you're describing.
Exactly.
Right? And
because I think that's important.
It is, because it is. What makes us a total human? Is it just gaining material things? There's you could gain as many material things and still be empty.
Empty, yeah.
Right.
How many people have everything in the world and they're just the emptiest people?
Right.
Yeah.
Because again, to a certain point, those things work, but it doesn't give you the sense of being alive
and being authentic, and living an authentic life.
Exactly.
And that's the message that I'm trying to convey is that there's a lot of, I hate to use this, but I love it. It's a lot of emotional intelligence. It's a lot of being aware of our surroundings, being aware of people's responses, how they are in situations when they're feeling pushed down, thumb on what it is they're trying to do. There's a lot of that. That's a lot of emotional intelligence, and I think that it's important to create a space for people and not poo-poo on the things that they think are important, right?
Yeah.
Because this is what they think or they don't feel adequate enough. I think it's important to nurture those things and to, like we always say, tap into those undiscovered traits and characteristics that we have innately.
Yes.
And bring those things out and pour water on them and grow them. You know what I mean?
You know, it's interesting, right? Because again, you know, I'm always thinking about, okay, what am I saying? What are we doing? What is that? Right. And, you know, one of the things that we say is, what do we do? You know, we talk about life, leadership, and culture, right? Mm-hmm. And personally, like, I always thought about, okay, what does that mean for me? What does that translate to, right? Is that it's almost as if you can't have any one of those three components without the other, right? But at the essence of it all is the individual life, right? The units of the collective, on whether or not they understand truly what they are. And truly the things that rise their emotions, right? Most people think that we're logical, right? We are logical, but we are also emotional.
Also very
and the
emotional.
idea is to be able to strike the balance, because when you become too logical, right? We're too reliant on data, probability, and stuff like that, right? That's what a machine does, right? When you become too free-spirited or whatever, that's also problematic because you lack structure. So the idea is to be able to utilize both aspects and understand, right? Because you can't be naive about the fact that when you go into an environment, people will project. There's people out there that is saying, wow, this is a whole bunch of bullshit that they're talking about, right? But what is life then, right? If not the ability to both be physically well and emotionally well.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't have one without the other.
You can't have one the other.
And I think that goes to that's why I like leadership so much.
Yeah.
Is because it's such a subjective topic.
Yes.
And it isn't numbers. It isn't leadership isn't about the profit and the bottom line.
That's managing.
That's exactly. It's so much more than that. And it's about, like you just said, striking that balance between the mental health and the physical well-being, you know, or the physical, you know what I mean? And I think that's a very intricate dance for people. And a lot of people think that they got it.
No.
And a lot of people think that they don't, you know, it's
because you're constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And you constantly are learning. And and when you hold a fixed position, right, it's hard for you. And this is, again, this idea of having a fixed position, right? I'm a success. The universe is all about changing, constant changing, constant evolution. When you hold tight to perfectionism, when you hold tight to this idea of what professionalism looks like, right? When you try to fit the mold of the status quo, what you truly are doing is preventing evolution from happening.
Yeah, that's
growth from happening.
For not only for yourself, but for others, for the environment. Yeah,
that's why you can't separate life, leadership, and culture. Like, it's impossible.
Exactly.
You know, and people that are going to go into the process of interacting. And again, think about it. You're a parent. You're a leader.
Yeah.
Right. You're a kid that plays sports. You're a leader. Everybody has that potential to be a leader, right? Most of us do it consciously. A lot of us do it subconsciously. But in either way, we lead people. Yeah. Mainly, we do it subconsciously.
Mainly, yes.
Yeah, maybe because we all are influencing one another. So the more you know about yourself and the more you know about other people, right, then you start feeling less of a fraud and start living from a place of your own authenticity and from who you are. And what happens with that, and this is my caution to people that are beginning to look at that, be aware, right? Not everybody's ready for that.
That's true.
Not everybody's ready for it.
That is true.
Not everybody's ready to see someone that thinks differently, someone that is assured, right, that understand the balance between the logical and the emotional, right? But somebody has to do it in order for us to be evolving, for our communities to evolve, for our organizations to evolve, and create environments, like you said, in which people start living from that. And, you know, I always I remember working at a school district for a couple of years, and I remember the sarcastic the sarcastic remarks when it came to social and emotional intelligence, right? Again, it's like their lack of understanding. And somebody said, you know, oh, well, we're going to sit around and say kumbaya, you know, sarcastic ass people that say all that stuff, right? It's like, it's not about this sense of weakness. And that's the part, right? It's like meekness, like in the Bible and things like that doesn't mean that you are weak. It doesn't mean any of that. You know, it means a broader understanding of the spectrum of life, right? And everybody in it, you know, and you could have your really, really hardcore militant person, right? And you could have your very, very soft person and everybody in between. But they're all spectrums of the same thing. They're all aspects of the same thing, right? And striking that balance, right? It's really what's needed right now. But that takes courage.
And vulnerability.
And a lot of vulnerability to come from that point.
Yeah.
You know? So it's either that, right? To take that path, or continue to do what we do.
Those are the two options.
Those are the two options, right?
Yeah.
And somehow you got to find your place within it all.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you're ready for meaningful personal growth and transforming your business or organization, visit our website at ASQEmpowermentServices.com for more information. Stay tuned for more exciting topics.